ora proprio.
This is my village. This is my home. But I have to leave my home, even though I don't want to. I was born here, grew up here, and spent many happy days here. I haven't been here for a long time because of work. I work on a ship as a cook for about 8 or 9 months a year. Why am I forced to leave my home now? I'll tell you the story. It all started when I was at sea. It was the height of summer. My neighbor, a healthy grandfather of 60, hanged himself. Nobody understood what he was going through at that moment. He did not leave a note. He didn't say anything to anyone. He just killed himself in silence. The villagers discussed possible reasons. Maybe there were debts, or maybe he was very lonely. Anyway, they buried him. Only 40 days had passed when suddenly there was news. My former teacher died. But not because of her age. She had some kind of heart problem. And she took pills regularly. But one day she took a very large dose. The whole village was in a state of panic. Not only was she a wonderful person and never had a conflict with anyone in her life, but she was also a devout person. She went to church every Sunday. No one expected that of her. Then things quieted down a bit. Nothing happened for about 2 months. People calmed down and accepted it, and they said of those who died, they probably had their reasons. We can't know what was in their hearts. Winter was coming. I was about to return from a 9-month trip. I wanted to see my family and friends. And that day came. I am happy and content with my life, back home for the duration of my vacation. I get off the bus and call a taxi home. I waited a long time for a taxi. Suspiciously long. I had to call my friend Adam to pick me up. It was already below freezing outside, it was snowing and dark. And I stood there like a fool, dressed completely out of season. My friend came to me in half an hour, but in that time it seemed to me that the cold had gotten to my bones. When I met my friend, I expected the standard questions about work, plans. However, my friend was very quiet and started talking in a completely different way. Liam, you've been away for 6 months. And you don't know what's going on in the village. But please listen to me carefully now and don't interrupt me. That's the part that made me really excited. Adam, did someone die? He noisily breathed out and answered. Yes, but not just one, many died. And then he started to list all the people who had died during this time. I was blown away when I heard how many people had already died. Wait, you're not kidding? He looked at me like I was an idiot and replied. Is this kind of thing a joke? No, of course not, unfortunately. What happened anyway? I told you, don't interrupt. Anyway, it was like this. From a long and detailed story, I managed to learn the whole chronology of these terrible events. First, his grandpa died, then my teacher. Then, in 6 months, both very young children and old people died, he said in a low voice. It was not necessarily suicide as in the first 2 cases, some simply disappeared, others died in strange ways. most shocked when on September 6 school children of 8 to 9 years old did not return home. The police couldn't find them. Not alive, not dead. My neighbor was also missing. She left for work in the morning and never came back. Unlike those kids, she was found a week later. She was completely naked, emaciated, but no longer alive. She died of hypothermia. My friend's grandfather drowned in the river. His clothes were lying on the shore. He was only wearing a bathing suit. Nobody can predict when a person will die. It could be quiet for a week, and then several people could die on the same day. My friend said that nothing strange had happened before all these events. They die and that's it, Adam told me. We drove in silence to the village. I still couldn't believe what I had heard and was trying to figure out what to do next. We have to leave here now. I'm skeptical, but I won't be able to leave here for at least a month. What's taking so long? I have to take care of the animals on the farm and the house. It's not a quick move. Don't leave the house unnecessarily, my friend warned me, and left for home. I looked around and was horrified. I thought I was in a horror movie. There was nothing on the street. It was as if the whole village had died out. With this feeling of anxiety, I ran home. I needed to see my family and hug them tightly, never letting them go. As soon as I opened the door, I saw the face of my beloved wife. At first, she flinched, but then she threw herself into my arms. I'm so glad you're finally back. I was scared for our son. I looked at her more closely. She had lost a lot of weight, her skin was grayish, and there were bruises under her eyes. It was obvious that she had been under stress for a long time and hadn't been sleeping much. Why didn't you tell me? I asked her. My wife and I talked at least a few times a week when the ship pulled into port. After I asked my question, she stopped smiling. Liam, I wanted to tell you when you arrived. You were at sea, so I didn't want to make you nervous, she said in a shaky voice, tears already streaming down her face. She was relieved to have her husband home and by her side. I understand you, don't worry, everything will be fine. Just don't cry. But we need to get out of here as soon as possible. She hugged me and started crying silently. After Lizzie calmed down a bit, we had a serious discussion. It turned out that Lizzie had taken our son to his grandmother's house in another town after those school kids had gone missing, but she couldn't leave because of work. Lizzie, you have to tell your job that you're quitting. Yeah, I know. I've already told my boss I'm quitting, but he wants me to work for a couple of days until he finds a new employee. If it's that bad, we can't even wait a couple days. Why didn't you leave with our son before? Because I thought things would get better sooner or later. Then I just started waiting for you. I hugged her, and the more I looked at my wife, the more I realized that things were really bad. The only thing that made me happy was that my son was away from this place. The next day my wife told her boss that she couldn't wait until he found a new employee. But under duress, she agreed to work 2 more days. Now we have to live every day under stress. And I pray to God that nothing happens to our family. My wife came home around 7 o'clock and told me that her coworker wouldn't be coming out for her work shift today. I guess she won't be coming out again, she said. I remained silent, which was my way of agreeing. She brought a bag of groceries and we started cooking dinner together. No one had come over to our house in all that time. We used to have guests almost every Friday. It was depressing. Our friends were understandable, and I didn't want to leave the house. In about an hour, we were already sitting in the living room having dinner. We talked about various things to forget a little about the horror around us. After my wife said that she was tired and would go to bed, I started cleaning up after dinner. There was nothing to do. I had no desire to read or watch TV, so I went to bed next to her. I knew the time would pass faster that way. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the window. "Liam, open the door. It's me." I recognized him immediately. Jacob is my childhood friend. After high school, I went to the local university, and he went to Chicago. I immediately jumped up and ran to open the door. There was no doubt of fear at that moment. He liked to arrange such surprises. Jacob was a fun-loving man and often came to visit at any time without warning. Lizzie was okay with that and made fun of our friendship, calling us brothers forever. "Yep. Let's go to my house. My parents are asleep, so we'll have to go in discreetly," Jacob said. I was a little embarrassed by Jacob's suggestion. I didn't want to leave my house. After all, it was at least a 15-minute drive to his house. "Let's go to my house. It's better not to be outside now," I said in a low voice. "I know something strange is going on here, but you know me, I don't believe in this nonsense," he assured me with a cheerful smile. Maybe it's for the best, I thought, and agreed. All the way I tried to find some kind of trick, but everything was normal. There was nothing strange about my friend. We reached his house without adventure and went inside. Nothing unusual. It was just like a house. He threw me a can of beer, we sat down on the couch in the living room, and Buddy didn't beat around the bush. He told me all the details about their divorce. I listened intently, nodding my head occasionally. It was nothing out of the ordinary. They just fell out of love with each other. We sat for a while longer, reminiscing about the old school days and our pranks, and then I knew it was time to go home. "I'm going home now. Lizzie will be worried if she wakes up and doesn't see me. Come over tomorrow and we'll all sit together." "Okay, I'll come by tomorrow. Can you walk yourself or shall I drive you?" "You'd better drive me. I'm already sleepy," I said in a tired voice. I started to say something when Lizzie's voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Liam, get out of there now." "My God," I cried out in horror, and then I looked at my friend. "Do you really think your wife is in there?" said Jacob, looking me straight in the eye. For a few seconds I forgot how to breathe, my body felt petrified, my muscles felt like lead, and I couldn't say a word. "You shouldn't have left the house at night," it said in my head. Which one is which? Who and what should I believe? My brain refused to think. I didn't know whether to run away from the door or towards it. "Liam, can you hear me?" My wife's cry. Despite the fear that overwhelmed me at that moment, I was determined to think clearly. I asked my friend to give me the phone. "Jacob, give me the phone. I forgot mine at home." It was a lie, of course. I wasn't completely out of my mind not to take my phone with me. "Why?" Jacob asked. "I'm going to call Lizzie at home and see if she's okay." "You don't need to call her. I'll tell you this, she's sleeping soundly. And what's outside that window is not your wife. Can I borrow your cell phone?" At that moment, I knew this wasn't my friend. I pretended not to suspect anything and took a mug of water. It was filled almost to the brim and felt just right. As soon as I brought it up to the cubes, with all my might, I threw it in his face and ran out to call my wife. At the door was my Lizzie, with huge eyes full of fear and determination. "Lizzie, is it really you?" "Yes, let's go quickly," I said, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards our car. We heard a growling voice. "Stop, bitch, you can't hide from me." There was shouting behind me, but I didn't think to turn around. The car started and we drove off immediately. Even though Lizzie had saved me, after everything that had happened, I began to doubt that she was really my wife. I didn't make the same mistake. I pulled out my phone and called my wife. At that moment, I heard a familiar tune in the backseat. Lizzie smiled, then added, "Checking up on me? Of course I would be too if I were you." As we drove home, I noticed that there was a small wooded area all around. Then it was left behind on both sides of the road. We were surrounded by fields. "Lizzie, where are we? Do you think I found you at Jacob's house?" All these thoughts made my head spin. A long pang shot through my chest. We were 20 kilometers from the village. It was dawn. So it had been 7 hours, not the couple I thought it would be. My questions grew louder and louder. I realized that my wife had saved me. As soon as we crossed the threshold of our house, I demanded answers. She was silent for a few seconds, gathering her thoughts. Then she started talking. She had a nightmare where I died. It was so realistic that she woke up. When she found out I wasn't home, she panicked. She decided to find me at any cost. She remembered that we had installed a geolocation app. That's how she found me. She said she geolocated me and there was no friend's house. I was standing at the edge of the cliff and didn't respond to her screams. I remembered the place she was talking about and my legs gave out from the realization of what was happening. Jacob texted me that morning and it turned out he was in Chicago and had no plans to come here. We packed everything we needed and left for a neighboring town to my grandmother's house. I had to leave that house, where I had experienced the most horrifying event of my life. The next day, about 12 people died overnight in the village. This information was leaked to the media. A lot of police came and started checking everyone. I didn't want to go back there, but I had to. Most of my stuff was still there because we left in a hurry. The car wouldn't start. We had to call an Uber. It cost $160, but it was worth it. It was difficult to find a car, as few people were willing to go there now. The driver dropped us off at the house and we immediately started to pick up our things. Lizzie went into the kitchen to gather the essentials. I went into the living room. As we decided how to organize a large-scale move, I was anxious. Once I had most of my things organized, I went to the bedroom. I suddenly noticed a small piece of paper on my desk. I picked up the note, my hands trembling, and began to read it. It was written in a scrawled handwriting. "You can't hide from me." I yelled, "Lizzie, come here." My wife dropped what she was doing and came into the living room without hesitation. "What is it? Did you see that?" She examined the paper, looked up, and stated, "It doesn't say anything here." I grabbed her by the hand and led her out of the house. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice firm. I felt as if I had been doused with ice water and could not calm down. A car was waiting for us. The driver helped us load our things in the back of the car without a word. We drove away from the house without another moment's delay. As we drove away, I noticed that the village was completely empty. The police were no longer going door to door interviewing the residents. I closed my eyes and kept repeating to myself, "This is not my problem now. We will leave this place and everything will be fine." The car was going fast. There were no traffic jams or other obstacles. I was happy about that. I don't know what will happen to the house or the village. Time will tell. The situation is now in the hands of the media. We must wait. Without warning, there was a loud bang. Why the hell is the road flat? Another hard bang, so hard that I hit my head on the ceiling of the car. What the hell is going on? What the hell is wrong with the car? I demanded to know what the driver was doing. I looked at his face. I yelled at the driver. His face didn't show any emotion, as it was supposed to. "Hey, who am I talking to?" I turned to the driver one last time and he slowly turned his face in my direction. He shouted a phrase that annoyed and frightened me. "You can't hide from me." His face began to deform, monstrously. The skin was falling off in flaps, exposing the bones of his skull. Razor-sharp teeth erupted in his mouth. Instead of eyes, I saw black holes. Lizzie screamed at the top of her voice, but I was numb with fear and couldn't say a word. Then the image changed and I realized we were finished. That monster disappeared like a flash of lightning. And we were trapped in the truck, which was sinking deeper into the pond with every second. The icy water was filling the cab, and the door handles wouldn't budge.